PUV Modernization Program itutuloy. SMNI hosts, nakalaya na, at marami pang iba. Kumusta for me? This is Avor Joseph and welcome to News I Deem Worthy Recap Weekly Edition number 29. We have tons and tons to cover for the third week of December 2023, though paulit-ulit lang sila. So skip to the timestamps provided if it piques your interest. Get on data for the basic selective summation. Here are some PH News commentary for your convenience. Jeepney strikes amid PUV Modernization Program. Nagkaroon ng transfer strike o tigil pasada noong December 14 at December 15, 2023 na pinamunuan ng piston o pagkakaisa ng mga samahan ng tsuper at operator nationwide. Although, of course, nag-upisa sila noong 14 pa lamang at sinundan naman sila ngayon ng manibela o malayang alyansa ng bus employees at laborers to the 18th of December hanggang 29th of December patungkol sa konsolidasyon at pag-phase out ng mga traditional jeepneys na hindi pasok sa standard ng Land Transportation Franchising and Regulatory Board o LTFRB na i-implementa sa ika-31 ng Disyembre 2023. Kumbaga, this is a last-ditch effort o Hail Mary kung saan gusto nilang iparelisa yung transport system ng ating bansa, especially sa NCR, para malaman ng gobyerno o ng LTFRB DOTR na talagang hindi kakayanin ng Pilipinas and basically our metro system to handle such a consolidation or at least yung pag-phase out nga or pagtanggal ng prangkisa ng ating mga tsuper operators. Sinasabi ni President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. na 70% ng mga operator ay nakapag-commit at nakapag-consolidate na under the new Public Utility Vehicle Modernization Program o PUVMP. Ayon sa datos ng DOTR LTFRB statistic kung saan sinasabing 153,000 out of the 222,000 o 69 NICE, 0.8% have compiled or at least have complied with the PUVMP, samantalang 1,739 na kooperatiba or bagong kooperatiba na ang nabuo kasunod ng mandatong ipinatong ng gobyerno. Ngunit maraming nagsasabi at least yung mga transport groups na hindi ito yung big picture or at least hindi ito yung full picture or at least kung saan tayo dapat nakafocus. Masyadong inflated yung mga numbers na ito. Sinasabing kasama raw sa statistic na ito, yung 70%, ang mga bus at minibuses pati na yung mga UV expresses. Now, minibuses I understand kasi they're practically para sa mga traditional jeepneys, pero ayon sa Rappler na kinuha ang datos sa piston, only 26% lang at 36% lang ng jeepneys at UV Express units respectively ang nakapag-consolidate, samantalang nationwide 84,000 out of the 150,000 or around 56% or 57% lamang ang na-consolidate. 26% sa jeepneys at 36% sa mga UV Expresses or at least sa Kalakhang, Maynila lamang ang nakapag-consolidate. Well, talagang makikita mo na mahirapan or at least hamper yung mga operators or at least yung mga jeepneys or at least yung public transportation system natin sa December 31 deadline. We don't even know if we should call these as public transportation as they are privately owned, although it's not like they could all strike. I mean, wala silang pera, they don't have the money to do it and they can't sustain them for very long. That's why paulit-ulit na lang or at least dalawang araw, tatlong araw lang yung PV strike. Although this would be the last ditch effort kung saan from December 18 to December 29 talagang complete stop na sila sa kanilang, or at least yun yung gusto nila mangyari. Gusto nilang complete stop on all their operators or at least all their jeepney operators. Sinasabing walang magiging transport crisis sa Pilipinas, which may very well be true, pero remember, ang commuting is not just the commuters but also the drivers, conductors, and operators as well. I mean, them taking the money na otherwise would be spent on goods in malls and luxury items will be better spent sa mga jeepney kung saan mas madaling magsi-circulate yung pera, making it more viable to the economy rather than lining the pockets of the richest of the rich in the Philippines. Kumbaga, at least ginamit natin yung pera na mapupunta dapat sa mga tsuper. Well, sa tsuper, gagamitin agad nila yung pera na yun because there will be no spare expenses sa kanila. Samantalang kung bibili tayo ng luxury goods sa malls or anything for that matter na kumbaga sinisave lang nila yung pera nila in a vault somewhere para silang dragon na nag-hoard ng gold, well, hindi nila isi-spend yun and therefore hindi masisirculate sa economy, which is what we want with the money kasi nga that's how economies work in general. And if binigyan lang natin sila sa mga kumpanya tulad ng SM na hindi naman sa sinasabi kong bihira sila mag-develop but masyado silang corporatized at marami silang liquidity or financial holdings kung saan yung wealth nila naka-stock away lang, hindi nila ginagamit yon. Consolidation talaga yung yung fino-focus ng ating DOT or LTFRB. Since ulit-ulit na lang itong issue na ito, I will just, ulit-ulit as well what I just said in a previous video. I think this is NIDW recap number 26. So, umaangal ng mga transferred groups sa planong pag-phase out ng mga hari ng kalsada, ang mga traditional jeepneys na hindi pasok sa standard ng LTFRB sa kontrobersyal na Public Utility Vehicle Modernization Program, citing high cost of the newer models adding burden to the isang kahig isang tukang jeepney drivers. And they postponed it like 6 years now. So I don't think there are any more leeway to be given, pero it's still a governmental agency, which means they can do whatever the fuck they want and will have no say with what goes in and out. Sinabing ang mga modern minibuses na nire-recommend as the alternatives made in China costs too much, around 3 million pesos each at the high end and 1.5 million pesos for the lowest end according to the LTFRB, samantalang ang ating mga jeepney drivers ay hirap makabayad ng kanilang boundary kada araw. And although I am talking about the operators that will shoulder the cost, it will still be the drivers who will be taking the punch. Not to mention yung kakarampot na 210,000 to 280,000 na subsidiya ng gobyerno per operator, or at least per unit na bibilhin ng operator or ng jeepney driver or whatever cooperative na nag-consolidate as a result of this modernization program. Isa yan sa mga concern, ang mga operator na nagme-may-ari at nagpaparenta ng kanilang traditional jeepneys para sa boundary ang maapektuhan ng malala ng naturang pag-phase out ng decrepit at bulok na PUV jeeps. Pagme-may-ari nila ang mga jeeps na suddenly ay magiging obsolete starting January 2024. Though, to be fair, bihira sa isang tsuper na sila ang may-ari ng kanilang minamanehong jeepney, which is in fact a crucial shame. Pero it's more in the standpoint of gagamitin lang nila yung jeepney na yun and then they'll pay for the boundary and then do whatever they want. Hindi na nila kailangan isipin yung repair cost, maintenance cost, at saka yung parking nun. So that was a plus for them. But still, hindi sila yung may hawak ng means of production nila, which in that case was the service na pinoprovide nila as the drivers sa mga ruta. I don't wanna get too deep into the dialectical materialism, pero that's basically how it goes. I approve of the Jeepney Modernization Program dahil sa mga pasaway na tsuper, mga bulok na sasakyan na hindi lang hazard sa environment, kundi hazard rin sa aesthetic at safety ng mga mananakay at mga taong nasa kalsada, which is mostly mga tsuper at mga pasahero nila because of the open, unfiltered air emissions at yung pag-inhale ng emissions ng mga decrepit at bulok na jeepneys. I approve of the Jeepney Modernization Program because of the implications at mga pinupush ng LTFRB tulad ng pagsisetup ng mga tsuper ng kooperatiba or corporations or whatever na binubuo ng mga jeepney drivers, not just operators, yung single-link operations, upang hindi sila mag-unahan at mag-compete sa mga mananakay na isa sa mga dahilan kung bakit sila nagbe-break ng mga pamantayan sa lansangan. It also standardizes their salaries and even employment benefits if they're lucky. Not to mention the dreaded boundary system sa single driver to operator model na nagpa-proliferate kung saan naiuwi na lamang ng ating mga mamang tsuper ay kakarampot kapag tinanggal na yung cost ng crudo at boundary. Because even in the system of operator to jeepney driver relationship, sila pa rin magbabayad sa crudo na gagamitin nila. I don't want to antagonize the operator, the owning class, and the laborers, the drivers, kasi basically in the same vicinity, they're basically in the same class, just with different holdings. Sa kooperatiba, magkakaroon sila ng say sa mga desisyon ng consolidated cooperatives instead of individualized. Kasi kapag kooperatiba, na-democratize yung desisyon na ginagawa sa isang korporasyon o kooperatiba, as I said. Kung saan, ang mga manggagawa ang may-ari ng makinarya ng kanilang pagkita at makademokrasya ang pagdesisyon nila sa kanilang trabaho. Anything related to their work, like participating in strikes, fairs, benefits, at syempre collectivized and communalized yung responsibilities at duties ng mga jeepney drivers. Kaya I am definitely approving of the cooperative system na pinupush at yung consolidation na pinupush ng LTFRB. Kasi with a consolidated fleet, mapupush yung mga drivers to, be more mindful of how they through the lansangan kasi nga an accident or any misguided recklessness in their driving could result into the whole operation stopping or at least pausing for a minute. Ngunit of course, ang papasa ng cost na yan ay ang ating mga jeepney drivers pati na yung mga biyahero at parokyano ng one-in-a-kind transportation method na kailangan taasan ng boundary o lease sa mga ginagamit na jeep. Pair that with high inflation, disproportionate fare hikes at presyo ng krudo, talagang ang bilyones na subsidy ang kakailanganin para mapalitan ang nawawalang capacity o mawawalang capacity ng local transportation method ng ating mga syudad. Isa pa sa mga kritisismo ay ang soulless at bland design ng mga minibus na i-import pa galing China. Maraming nagpupush na tulungan ng gobyerno ang mga lokal na industriyang aangkop sa lokal na demand ng mga modern jeepneys. At least yung aesthetics will be the same as the traditional jeepneys, just with a bit more twist. 30 to 60% I think of the fleet is already modernized and hindi naman kailangan yung may aircon and all that stuff. It is recommended pero hindi naman yun yung main focus ng modernization program, or at least yung nakaraang transport strike proved it to be, negotiable. It's more on the makinarya at engine na ginagamit to be Euro 4 or Euro 5 compliant with regards to their engine. So at least yung aesthetics will be the same as traditional jeepneys kung ang gagawa is yung local na industriya at meron ng ganong locally made vehicles na pinoproduce but of course with limited capacity. But yes, I approve of union work as they give bargaining power to the working class. I mean that those that produce value in a company or any institution of money-making endeavor. Sure, it's disruptive, but that's what protests are supposed to do. Else, what does inconveniencing you does? And in this case, the bosses are the government who wants to implement sweeping changes that could potentially cripple their bottom line, the approval of the people, and crippling those relying on the income generated in this endeavor. It doesn't matter if I don't agree with what they want to accomplish. Union work is union work, and we cannot impede on that front. We have freedom of assembly. Albeit, I see their protesting as more of an overreaction kasi nga marami rin transport groups ang did not participate in this kind of disruptive transport strike kasi nga they're probably overreacting. But yeah, I do agree with some of their points. The officials from LTFRB and MMDS said the strikes did not make a difference or dent in the transportation capacity of the country. I think they said they have 680 reserved vehicles to deploy kapag nagkaroon ng crippling transportation mobilization, pero they have only deployed like 10% of the total fleet. I mean, freaking scabbers. Anyway, by branding them as scabbers, we cultivate animosity inside the working driving class, which we do not want. Kasi nga kailangan natin sila bigyan ng breathing space, as in dialectical materialism. We need to cultivate a class consciousness at hindi dapat natin pinag-aaway yung people with the same cause. Kasi nga pag nagkaroon ng animosity between two sides of the same coin, the bourgeoisie or the owning class would be the only one benefiting sa squabble na ito. The scabbing isn't a huge statement with regards to the hold of the union, rather a statement on the lengths of our hardworking drivers will go to out of desperation just to break even and put food on the table. The broken system that perpetuates the misery and poverty. The reason why I even agreed to the proposal was because of their bargaining back then. I mean, it reduced the phased out vehicles from all traditional jeepneys to just those that are decrepit and literally have parts falling off the road. And that's the only goal, or at least and that's the greatest overall win we could ever achieve, along with some minor improvements sa mga existing traditional jeepneys. Although I agree they should up the loan and grants/subsidies to be given to our chuper. But this is the supposedly unintended result of boosting importation from modern jeepney manufacturing countries like China, of which the Philippines has little to none. Kaya I was pushing for the local government to have some protectionism of our local industries with regards to this kind of stuff. Kasi nga traditional and basically modern jeepneys are an essential part of the public sector and public utility vehicle in general and transportation also. Kailangan natin magkaroon ng backbone of a local industry to supply and meet the demands of the market. And yes, nire-use ko yung mga pinagsasabi ko last time na nag-strike ng grupong Manibela para sa NIDW recap number 21. Pero wala naman bagong nangyari, so I don't care. Here are some more page news for your convenience. SMNI host Badoy at Celiz nakalaya na. Pinalaya na ng House of Representatives sa mga SMNI host na sina dating Undersecretary Presidential Communication Operations Office o PCOO at National Task Force to End Local Communist Armed Conflict o NTFL-CAC spokesperson na si Lorraine Badoy at Jeffrey Celiz na na-cite in contempt dahil sa kanilang various chicanery when called upon by the House of Representatives. Na-cite in contempt si Lorraine Badoy dahil sa kanyang conflicting answers patungkol sa mga tanong ng ating mga kongresista sa product placement o advertisement sa kanyang show, samantalang na-cite in contempt naman si Jeffrey Celiz dahil sa false information, quote-unquote, na kanyang naipakalat patungkol sa sinabi niyang, or at least yung sinabi niya sa kanyang show na 1.8 billion pesos daw or yung 1.8 billion pesos daw yung travel expenses ng current House Speaker and President's cousin, later Representative Martin Romualdez, pati na ang kanyang refusal to disclose the name of the Senate source ng kanyang impormasyon kasi sinabi niya yung source daw ng impormasyon niya na nagsasabing 1.8 billion ang travel expenses ni Martin Romualdez ay galing sa Senado or at least empleyado sa Senado. Sinasabi niyang shy under SOTO law which makes it so that the journalist or at least yung taong nakakuha ng impormasyon could not just name their whistleblower as they are protected somehow, of which the representatives probing on the issue said na hindi naman kayo journalist or at least you're not protected under the SOTO law. Sinasabing ang dahilan or at least sinabi ng House of Representatives, isa sa mga dahilan kung bakit pinalaya nila yung dalawang host ay because of humanitarian reasons. Not to mention it's the holiday season and it won't be a good look for the House of Representatives to, you know, take away those journalists or at least hosts and the fact that they threatened to stage a hunger strike because of the witch hunt, quote-unquote, ng mga kongresista laban sa SMNI at sa kanila mga host. I mean, they help Marcos and Romualdez in their position as we speak. Pero, you know, that's basically only because of Sara Duterte. May sinusulong ring batas na House Bill number 9701 patungkol sa revocation ng prangkisa ng Suarsug Media Corporation o Sunshine Media Network International na tatalakayin sa Enero dahil sa umunay paglabag sa ilang provisyon ng kanilang prangkisa. Don't bite the hand that feeds you and, you know, chip away or at least take away Duterte's because hindi naman siya ganon politically influential unlike when he was the administration itself. Pero dahil ngayon, you're still clinging on to Duterte and not jumping ship unlike what most of the PDP laban did, well, expect some retribution. Especially if you're giving Duterte the medium to attack the Congress and particularly the President's cousin, Martin Romualdez. Again, don't bite the hand that feeds you, especially since you're cooperating doing wicked ways but you just had to go against the people you propped up. And sinabi naman ng SMNI na walang intentional misinformation na i-disseminate and sure, that may be true pero SMNI functions the same way Fox News does sa US or at least yung Fox Corporation under Murdoch. I think, Murdoch, right? Ang inireklamo ay hindi yung mga news program, quote-unquote, kundi ang mga programa at host nito na hindi saklaw ng journalism clause which meant they could probably get away with almost anything, spewing dangerous rhetoric and demagogical assertion with regards to the enemy of the season. Right now, it's the Congress, particularly Romualdez. Kinulong at na-cite in contempt ang mga host ng Sunshine Media News International matapos ang mainit na diskusyon tungkol sa kanilang apparently false source, allegedly vaguely from the Senate tungkol sa sinasabi nilang 1.8 billion peso travel expenses at budget ng Speaker of the House of Representatives, Martin Romualdez, na nakipagbakbakan kay Duterte nakaraang linggo lamang. Ang mga host na si Lorraine Badoy, the former National Task Force to End Local Communist Armed Conflict o NTFL-CAC spokesperson and red tagging personality at Jeffrey Celiz ay pinatawag ng House of Representatives over the whole debacle regarding their slander, I guess, of Martin Romualdez's allegedly 1.8 billion peso travel expenses as they refused to answer who their sources was, which they vaguely admitted to, or at least to be someone from the Senate. Sinabi nilang from the Senate yung source nila regarding the 1.8 billion alleged travel expenses ni Martin Romualdez, I think last year, or at least this fiscal year. Ayon sa kanila, they're bound by the SOTA law which prohibits and protects media practitioners from naming or uncovering who their sources was to protect their identity and anonymity. Though most likely, it's a mix of they made it up and some tinge of actual source found after the fact, or at least after the fact na they had the agenda against Romualdez, although I don't have a horse in this race. The SMNI TV news network has responded to the attacks by the House of Representatives and decried some calls for revoking of their franchise as stifling journalism and journalistic integrity, of which they know a lot about, considering sila mismo ay in support and their TV programming hosts of the witch hunt and push for the ABS-CBN closure, which affected millions of avid network and TV watchers nationwide. So when they say this is stifling and the attack of journalism and journalistic integrity sa Pilipinas, they know what they're talking about, although at the other side of the fence. But this isn't about them. The French group of SMNI TV network is a clear example of the government propagandist / aligned corporation disguised as a TV network, only given credibility by the very people they prop up, at least in my opinion. In the journalism world, I don't think Badoy and other SMNI hosts has the credibility to use integrity and journalism badge as a shield, considering they could relentlessly red tag journalists and activists nationwide. It's like Tucker Carlson somehow being leftist. They had relentlessly red-tagged journalists and activists nationwide. Aside from the aforementioned Badoy, we have Roque, and most notably, former President Rodrigo Duterte. However, the closure of a TV network via revoking of franchises is a dirty trick to be pulled by the House of Representatives, whichever side they are on. Kung ang kanilang issue ay ang posing as legitimate news source, or at least yung paniniwala ng mga tao na they are apparently a legitimate news source, ay basically kagagawa nila. They have the political machinery that propagated that kind of news, or at least news in quote, lalo na si BBM that benefited a lot in the 2022 and probably even 2016 and any other election, kung saan nagbenefit siya sa political machinery at yung of course the propagation of fake news and misinformation sa kanyang kalaban at of course in favor of him. Kung ang kanilang issue ay ang posing as legitimate news source ang mga programming hosts ng nasabing programa, well, they could legislate the bad actors out of doing any shady dealings, considering they're literally the legislature. They can legislate it. It's in the name. Of course, the closing of a TV network will not stand when we pose for the Democratic banner the House of Representatives claim to fly under. They could legislate for TV networks to more succinctly and clearly put in disclaimers in the beginning, possibly middle, though that would be intrusive, and end of the program, along with guardrails to ensure that the integrity of news in general by actual journalists don't get drowned out by the numerous for interests like SMNI think pieces posing as journalism, again, in my opinion. Even yung mga activist group like the NUJP na naapektuhan sa red tag culture na nakultivate ng nasabing network at yung mga personality behind that network has condemned the idea of ever having the SMNI franchise revoked. But ayaw nila yun. Any form of revoking of franchises of a media or news network shall not fly, at least according to them. That kind of integrity by the journalists / activist groups show na they just don't pick and choose between what's wrong and what's right according to some arbitrary ideological boundaries. Kumbaga, if they're left, they just don't protect the left. They also protect the right. They have the same stance against the ABS-CBN shutdown along with a diametrically opposed SMNI TV network. Although there were allegedly clear violation of some codes, or at least the franchise violation with regard to advertisement disclosure in the network, mga product placement. Nagsabi pang sila'y mag-hunger strike in protest of being put in contempt. Ayon kay Badoy, ang kanilang democratic right to free expression is being trampled and that they're saddened that the Communist Party of the Philippines has infiltrated the government when clearly they have the uniteam, Duterte and Marcos. It apparently wasn't apparent for her na she's literally red tagging members of the House of Representatives and probably the whole government. Kumbaga sinasabi niya, they are saddened by the fact na na-overtake na ng Communist Party of the Philippines, or at least na-infiltrate na nila yung gobyerno. Although most people na nasa gobyerno is aligned with Marcos, and Marcos is aligned with Duterte, at least for now. So are they saying that Duterte is also a communistly infiltrated person or at least yung kanyang ahensya. Now, just because things doesn't work out as they used to, kung saan you're given free reign nung chummy pa kayo ng administrasyong Duterte, doesn't mean na kayo'y somehow ino-oppress. Accusing the House of Representatives to be the cabal undermines the fact na isa kayo sa mga tumulong upang i-prop up itong mga congressperson na ito, even the President and Vice President herself. Your mistake was that you bit the hand feeding you indirectly. And I know na your allegiance is with Duterte and not particularly Marcos. You bit the hand that was feeding you indirectly by your provocation somehow. Si Senator Bernardo Bato de la Rosa, na dating PNP General at isa sa mga mastermind ng kanyang war on drugs at close associate ni Duterte, is still an asset in the Senate. He has said na isa ang SMNI sa mga asset ng gobyerno in countering terrorism at communism sa ating bansa, which just goes to show you how much in chums, or at least how much of a propaganda machine, in my opinion, SMNI is. 77% of PH provinces to be affected with El Nino. Maaring umabot sa 77% ng mga probinsya sa Pilipinas ang maapektuhan ng El Nino o severe drought sa darating na taon dahil sa patuloy at lumalalang epekto ng global warming sa ating bansa na nagresulta sa mga incomprehensibly hottest seasons and consecutive hottest recorded day trend na ating nakikita sa buong mundo. Mas lalong maapektuhan ng El Nino ang ating already crumbling infrastructure sa agrikultura na sentro ng tagtuyot na ating mararanasan sa mga darating na buwan, taon, at dekada. Remember, projected number 1 tayo sa pag-i-import ng bigas. And the fact that we are the 8th largest producer ng bigas, well, you see the problem there. Kahit na we output so much, we still import too much as well. Kumbaga yung China, number 1 sa pag-produce ng rice, tapos nalagpasan pa rin natin sila sa pag-i-import ng bigas. I know naman na paulit-ulit, or at least yung mga news is paulit-ulit, which is why I just, replayed it, and the fact that marami talaga akong gagawin and that my schedule is packed, well, I can't just, rehash the same thing over and over again, which is why I did the whole one outfit thing. Pero it's still, hopefully, makakabalik tayo sa, less rehashing of what I have already said. Pero the news is basically the same thing here. Hindi naman ako nagko-cover ng like precision cutting news. I also deliver rhetoric. I don't say, or at least I don't proclaim myself as a journalist per se. I'm more of a rhetoric, political pundit kind of guy. I just want that to be clear. At yan ang pagtatapos ng News I Deem Worthy Recap Weekly Edition number 29 for roughly the 3rd week of December 2023. Mag-suggest some more topics and our corrections to the balitas if we felt I misrepresented them in any way. Salamat sa mga panonood, mga kabayang of me. Like, subscribe, and follow my links and socials on Avoid Joseph that will be linked down below. Sa susunod bali, paalam. Psst.